From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
You're listening to the Wildcast podcast. Justin Spears, you're Michael Lev and sports editor of the Star, Ryan Finley. Hello, guys. How are we doing?
Good. Just like we drew it up last Saturday, right? Just like we had all said in our predictions, Arizona scores 1,000 points and wins by 500 points.
Right.
The way we all drew it up.
I don't think my analysis of the game was wrong necessarily. Right. Just my ultimate pick at the end of the day because, like the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz, I have no courage.
Oh, you're saying put him up.
Yeah.
You know who else didn't have much courage on Saturday? San Diego State. Well, here we can get into all that later.
Yeah.
Justin. I'm stepping on your toes. Go on ahead.
Well, no, we're going to be talking about the game against Mississippi State, home opener. Huge opponent for Arizona coming in this Saturday. The Pirate, Mike Leach, and the boys are coming to town. I got some over-unders for that game for you guys. We did over-unders last week. We're also going to do our Pac-12 pick'ems, and one of our listeners actually tagged us on Twitter and said, Justin Spears better be doing a lot of gloating on the next podcast episode because I was the only one who picked the Wildcats. So
gloat away.
So I've been celebrating for a week now in my victory. But let's talk about what we saw this past weekend, though, because Arizona, to me, surprised me a lot. We've heard a lot about Jayden de Laura. We've seen him play at the Pac-12 level at Washington State. But to come out and throw 4 touchdowns and also make throws that are just high-level throws, like some of the places that he was putting the ball, especially that touchdown throw to T-Mac. He just put it on a rope right into T-Mac's chest. Arizona finally has a competent quarterback, which they haven't really been able to say over the last couple of years.
Right. It wasn't that Arizona won the game. It was how they won the game. They never trailed. If any game can be over by halftime, that was kind of over by halftime. This was just a beatdown, which was surprising to me because San Diego State doesn't really get manhandled very often, or at least they haven't in the last couple of years. To me, this is a perfect example of what a quarterback can do for you, right? Yeah. Look at what Jayden de Laura did Saturday. Really orchestrating that offense, moving the ball up and down. Very much pro style. He wasn't, this wasn't a Mississippi State or Washington State game where he threw 1,000 times, but he was able to sort of really lead this offense. And then you look on the other side where Braxton Burmeister was bad and then he was hurt.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden San Diego State in the second half is playing with their backup quarterback who's very much a different style of player and really couldn't get anything going. I was reminded of all things, the Arizona UCLA game when Willie Tuitama made his debut. Do you remember this? It was his
52-14.
52-14. It was his home debut. He had made his debut the week before, I think, against Oregon State. Watching that game live, it was amazing what a quarterback with a great arm can do for an offense, and what a quarterback who can kind of put the ball where you need it to go can do for an offense. And just like the Jed Fish early era Wildcats, the early era Mike Stoops Wildcats couldn't find a quarterback.
Yeah.
And then they got a guy who can make all the throws, and all of a sudden that offense opens wide up.
Coincidentally, they both wore number 7, too.
Yes, exactly.
Did you think the game was over at halftime, Ryan Finley? You were sitting in the stands.
I was
correct?
sitting in the stands.
Tell us about your experience.
Hanging out with Steve Kerr?
It was hot. It was hot. There was between the tailgating and the and sitting in the stands, it was a long, hot day, but I stayed. It wasn't brutal. Most people in the stands had figured out a way to watch the game from some shade at that point. So, the back of my section had, maybe 500 people crammed into sort of the ADA row that was right there and watching the game. I know a friend of mine from college who was there who went to his seats in the upper deck, before kickoff, went, nope, too hot, went and found a spot in a bar with his dad, and they sat there the whole game and watched the game on TV. In a bar in the stadium.
Oh, so
they were still
just left altogether.
No, so they were still in the stadium. But I think a lot of people just kind of found a way to beat the heat. Again, though, this is what happens when TV gets in the way. Michael Lev, they thought that this was going to be this big coming out party for San Diego State. You're playing at 12:30 in the afternoon on over-the-air TV for the first time in 50 years. And as it turns out, I think playing at 12:30, really shot San Diego State in the foot. If this game was being played at 7 and on the CBS Sports Network, like most San Diego State games are, I'm not saying the Aztecs win the game, but I'm saying it's much closer. Because all of a sudden you've got the crowd on your side a little bit more. You're not so beat up by the heat. I mean, they were really affected by it. It becomes more of a spectacle instead of sort of a made-for-TV thing.
Yeah. Well, if crowd was a factor, they were essentially a non-factor by the fourth quarter.
I counted 2 roars of the crowd, and it was when the team ran onto the field, and it was when they blocked a punt.
Yeah,
and that
for
was
a touchdown.
For a touchdown, but that was it.
Yeah.
That was honestly it. And the second half, I mean, you could hear Arizona fans more than you could hear San Diego State fans.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Justin.
Sure.
Were you sunburned at the end of the day? Because I was sitting next to you, and Brian Peterson of AZ Desert Swarm was sitting next to me. He and I both got sunburned, even though the sun was not hitting us directly in the press box. Hopefully one of our listeners can maybe explain this unusual situation. But were the
countertops white in the press box?
They were.
So just bouncing off of that, like when you go skiing.
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Like in the water.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
In the ocean, it bounces off the water.
Right. Were you sunburned?
Kind of, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm already a ginger, so we're naturally pink anytime we're out in the hot weather. But I wore sunblock that day. But I wasn't too sunburned. But yeah, I was a little bit pink.
I remember you were rubbing the sunscreen out of your eyes during our
aborted
Facebook Live video. It was a day. It was a day, Ryan.
Did you hear about that?
Oh yeah. The phone overheated.
Yeah.
It was gross. For me, we went. I went with some family members who have season tickets there, and we were probably 10 feet from the front of the stadium tailgating, like, I don't know, 9:30 or 10. In a lot that had probably been paved a day and a half earlier. Everything there got done like just in time.
Yeah. You could tell with the grass too outside the stadium.
Oh my gosh, you could still see the seams.
Yeah.
And I was feeling it through my shoes, and it was 9:30 in the morning. And that's where I went, this is going to be a day. Your bottoms of your feet are hot through your shoes, and it's not 10 a.m. yet. We don't get that a lot here.
But as you said, advantage Wildcats.
Yeah.
Right? Because they practice in 100-degree weather all the time. How often do you think San Diego State practiced in 100-degree weather leading up to that game?
Never,
Once,
ever.
Maybe like the day before?
Yeah.
And, I know we're going to talk a lot more about this upcoming week. I feel like, atmospherically, that Arizona, again, has an advantage in this game. They've got the Pac-12 after dark factor going for them. Is that the equivalent of a 10 p.m. kickoff for visiting Mississippi State, which has to travel like 1,500 miles. Those teams in the SEC, they don't come out this way very often. So, I don't know, we'll see if any of that stuff adds up to another Arizona victory.
All right, guys, before we get into more of the Arizona-Mississippi State game and the Pac-12 slate, let's go over some over-unders for this weekend. So Jayden DeLora threw for 299 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. What about this weekend? Are you guys thinking over-under for Jayden DeLora passing yards? 299.5. Over-under 300 yards, guys.
I'm going to take the over.
Take the over, huh?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that this is going to sort of evolve into a shootout type of game, and they're going to have to match what Mississippi State does. And he was initially, when they first put his final completion up, he was at 300, but then they docked him a yard. They must have made some sort of slight adjustment. So I say Jayden gets there this week.
I think that the path to victory when you play a team like Mississippi State is not to turn it into a shootout. Because I think Arizona is going to hang in this game, I think it's going to be because they try to slow the game down. And that's going to mean a lot of running. I think it's going to mean a lot of formationing, to use a college football term. I think that they try to slow it down because that's their best path to victory. I think that means that Jayden DeLora throws for north of 250, but less than 300.
I'm going to take the over because of a slogan that has been a part of Arizona football for the last couple of years. It's personal. I think that Jayden DeLora, for this week, he wants to stick it to a guy who he signed up to play college football for originally, and Mike Leach. When Mike Leach was at Washington State, Jayden de Laura committed to Leach before he bolted to Mississippi State. So when a game like this happens, you worry that a guy's going to be maybe a little erratic, a little out of control, but I think Jayden de Laura will be control for the most part. I'm going to go with about right around 320 for Jayden de Laura. All right, and how about total touchdowns for Jayden de Laura? How about let's do 2.5? You going to go over, under? I'm going over since it's over 300. What about you?
I'm creating this narrative in my head now. So, again, if Arizona's going to hang with them, it's going to be because they're running the ball. That means to me that there's going to be a rushing touchdown or two in there. If that's the case, I'll take the under.
Okay.
Trying to think of what my final score. I'm gonna go for the under on this one too, because I know what my final score is going to be. Okay. How many touchdowns I have Arizona scoring, and how many of those might be something other than a Jayden de Laura touchdown pass. So I think 2 is a good number. I like that you put it at 2.5 though. It made me think.
2.5 is a good number.
You have a future in this, Justin.
Thank you. All right, how about rushing yards as a team for the Wildcats? I'm putting it at 170.5. Now we've seen in the first game, Scotty Graham loves to use his 4 horsemen. And Michael Wiley, the Florida State transfer, DJ Williams, freshman Jonah Coleman, and Rayshon Speedy Luke. So those are the 4 guys that Arizona uses at running back. Had a solid game plan against San Diego State, especially in the fourth quarter. They kind of were the final nail in the coffin there at the end. But 170.5, that's where I'm setting the over-under for rushing yards.
First of all, man, I like DJ Williams. I know we had written a lot about him, but I'm not sure I fully understood what a big part of this offense he would be until I saw him play Saturday. He really brings, I think, a different element than some of these other guys. Maybe it's just the veteran there. I don't know if they trust him more than some of the other guys, but it seemed like he got the ball a lot in big situations last week. Because of that, I'll take the over. I think, again, they're going to have to run the ball to be successful. Yeah. And if you're doing that well, you're going to finish with more than 170 yards against a Washington State team that, again, you're going to try to slow the game down against, I think.
I'm going to go with the under here because I think this week is more of a let's use the running backs in the pass game. Mm-hmm. So I think that this is going to be more of a game for Michael Wiley, who we've seen utilized in the pass game. Also, Rayshon Speedy Luke kind of as that little guy that they can use out in space. So I'm going with more receiving yards for the running backs, but I'm going to take the under on 170.5 for rushing yards.
Yeah, I'm going to go under as well. I just think it's going to be harder for Arizona to run the ball against this bigger, very veteran front that Mississippi State is going to be bringing to Tucson. But I do agree with Ryan in the sense that if they go over that figure, they have a very good chance of winning the game.
For sure.
So that's another good one. Yeah. Justin, you're on it today.
Well, Memphis, they ran the ball a lot, but it was against the 2s and the 3s for Mississippi State. So it was in garbage time. So we had one of our listeners, John Vader, he was like, well, Memphis averaged like 6 yards per carry against Mississippi State. And it's like, well, a lot of that was against their backups late in the game.
I mean, Memphis barely had the ball.
Yeah.
Barely had the ball in that game. Less than 20 minutes of time of possession. 3 for 12 on third downs. They had only 13 first downs the entire game. Again, if Mississippi State does that again, they're going to win and win big.
Absolutely.
So to Ryan's point, like game plan wise, keeping the ball on the ground, keeping Will Rogers on the sideline, that's the formula for the Wildcats.
How about our guy, Jerry Roberts, at middle linebacker? He had 12 tackles last weekend. I'm going to set his total tackles at 9.5. Will he get to double digits this weekend against Mississippi State?
No, I'll take the under there.
I'm going to go with the under because I think that this is going to be a game for like Christian Young and Jackson Turner and the safeties, Colby Cage at that will linebacker. I think this is going to be a game where their total tackles get up more. But Jerry Roberts will be flirting that line.
I'm taking the over.
Taking the over.
Oh, yeah. Look, Mississippi State's going to run more plays than San Diego State did. They don't throw downfield a ton. They throw a lot in the intermediate areas, and the middle linebacker is going to be in the vicinity. Whether he's making a solo tackle or an assist, I think he might even exceed last week's total.
Assist tackles, that's a good one. All right, now a very important one here, attendance.
Ooh.
How about attendance?
Ooh, this is the best one so far.
We're going to have more information in like an hour and a half on this, but go for it. Yeah.
So according to Athletic Director Dave Hickey's Wildcat Wednesday newsletter, they're expecting a sellout. Now, I don't know if that's
an interesting use of words there.
Expecting. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think they're key word there, expecting. They're hopeful that it's going to be a sellout. I mean, obviously the program has a lot of buzz right now, but 8 p.m. on a Saturday, I get it. It's the home opener. They're going to have a lot of people in the stands.
Right.
But I'm going to set the over-under at 44,000. Over-under.
Capacity is 45?
Is it?
It's like 50.
It's like right around 50,000.
Okay.
So how many are coming to see Phil Vassar?
Yeah, your boy.
A couple thousand people.
Maybe a couple thousand
people. I'm going to go with the under here. Now, announced attendance is completely different than actual butts and seats. I think actual butts and seats will probably be around 38 to 40. Mm-hmm. Announced, I'd say 42 to 44.
So we're going announced here. Announced?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll still go with the under.
Okay. I'm expecting a home-cooked meal tonight for dinner. But you know what? Life gets in the way. And oftentimes it's chicken tenders in the air fryer. You know what I mean? Like, Arizona is expecting.
I do know what you mean.
Arizona is expecting a sellout, but we know how Arizona fans get. It's going to be 8 o'clock. It's going to be 8 o'clock. There are going to be a lot of people on that mall who maybe just want to stay on that mall tailgating. And that's no knock on the football program. That's no knock on what Arizona's been able to accomplish. Again, logistically, if we have big lines coming out of Arizona Stadium, and if it's taken a while for people to get through those metal detectors, there may be some folks who just say, hey, I'll go watch it on TV. That is a them problem. That's not an Arizona problem. Yeah. That's a fans problem. Yeah. Because of that, I'll take the under. But I think it's going to be close. And, especially, if you were a season ticket holder, you'd be thrilled with this year's slate of games. Mississippi State's a different kind of team that throws the ball around. I think that's a fun game to go watch. And then you also get to see SC, Oregon, and ASU. That's a really good home slate for them. So,
and North Dakota State, right, Bison are no slouch.
Right. I think Arizona is going to sell out a handful of games this year. I'm just not sure it's going to be Saturday.
Yeah.
I'm going to go under as well. I just feel like in the past we've all sort of over-guessed or overestimated what the attendance will be, and then it's invariably below that. So just trying to learn from the past mistakes here. I'll take the under. But I agree with Ryan. I think it's going to be really close. I think they'll be over 40 for sure.
Right. And the caveat here is, of course, we could find out in the next hour that it is a sellout, and then we all look like chumps. But there you go.
All right, guys. Now let's move over to the Pac-12 pick'ems. Mm-hmm. Let's go over this week's slate of games. Now, we're not going over every single game. We just pick out the most notable.
Wait a minute. You're going to gloat about Arizona, but you're not going to gloat about the fact that you absolutely wiped the floor with us in the pick'ems from last week?
It's a long season, like you said, Lev, before the podcast.
Justin 4-1 straight up and 4-1 against the spread. First place. Ryan 3-2, 3-2. And I'm 3-2, 2-3. So work to do. Congratulations, Justin.
Right. The first number there is with the spread. Second number is overall winners, correct?
Yes. No, the other way around.
Other way around.
So straight up first and then against the spread.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So a lot of interesting matchups this week. Mm-hmm. Starting off with the conference matchup, USC versus Stanford. Trojans are 8.5-point favorites. Now, USC. They kind of felt like USC was back to being USC last week, right? Mm-hmm. With their win at the Coliseum. I love the offense. Caleb Williams, also Travis Dye, running back, the transfer from Oregon. Mm-hmm. They just have a lot of weapons. Jordan Addison from Pitt. I mean, from top to bottom, USC is just a really good team. I'm not buying the Cardinal this year, so I'm going to go with USC to win and cover. I got them by 10.
I don't feel like enough is being made of Tanner McKee, and it might just be because Stanford's kind of been a revolving door, a little bit at quarterback the last couple of years. Even somebody like Davis Mills was hurt a bunch, right? Did he only start one full season for them, Lev? I don't think enough is being made of Tanner McKee. That said, if we were lining up the 30 best football players on both teams, how many of them would play for USC? 25? 24?
Yeah.
At this point? I think that this is a shockingly low number. I like USC to win and to cover. I think Tanner McKee will play well, but you're not going to win it. A team that is built like Stanford is not going to beat a team that with the talent of USC. Not right now.
Yeah, I'm just not sold on USC yet. I don't really care that they beat Rice 66-14. They had 3 pick sixes in that game. I mean, that's kind of fluky, isn't it? The game is at Stanford. I'm still a believer in David Shaw, even though they've been down for a couple of years. Tanner McKee is a good quarterback. Son of Emmett, E.J. Smith, had a really nice game last week, rushing for 118 yards on 11 carries. Again, it's sort of like a certain formula has to happen, similar to, Arizona and Mississippi State, like ball possession, slow the game down, etc. I think that Stanford can ugly it up just enough to make USC sweat. So I'll take USC to win, but I will take the points and Stanford to cover.
To quote a famous man, what's your deal, Michael Lev? You really like Stanford?
He loves David Shaw.
What's your deal?
That's a big difference.
What's your deal? What's your deal? I can't see an SC Stanford game ever without thinking about what's your deal, right?
Is that a
100%?
Harbaugh?
Yeah, Harbaugh and Carroll.
Harbaugh to Uncle Pete after the game.
No, it was Pete to
Harbaugh because Harbaugh ran it up.
Yeah.
What's your deal?
All right, next game, Washington State versus Wisconsin. Sorry. T-Pain has forever ruined the way I say Wisconsin.
That is how it's pronounced in the Midwest.
Wisconsin?
Yeah.
So the Badgers, 17.5-point favorites over the Cougars. And boy, did the Cougars look bad last week. Squeaking one out against the Idaho Vandals, who are now playing at the FCS level, right?
Yes, they are.
So with that being said, Washington State obviously in rebuild mode, going to Madison where it gets loud. Man, I like the Badgers winning by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. Again, I didn't see anything from Washington State last week that led me to think that they are going to be relevant this year. Actually, my first thought was, man, Jaden DeLora would have beaten Idaho by more than whatever, it's, but again, you see teams make a big leap between weeks 1 and 2. You would think, especially with Ward, their new quarterback, that maybe he would make a larger leap. All that said, nobody beats Wisconsin at home. Very few teams in non-conference play hang with Wisconsin at home. I like the Badgers by 20, something like that.
You wonder if Washington State was like trying not to show all of its cards last week, and that maybe that almost bit them in the butt. You also try not to put too much stock, into week 1. All that being said, I'm with you guys. I think this is Wisconsin all the way. It's an interesting matchup, it's a very weird, cool college football game. Yeah. Stuck in the middle of the day there, but I think that the Badgers eventually will wear them down, and you're going to feel like you're going to cover, right? You're like hanging in there. Maybe you're down 14, and then Wisconsin punches one in late to win by 21. So I'm going to take the Badgers to win and cover.
Nobody plays kind of manly man football better than Wisconsin does right now. They've sort of taken that mantle from Stanford a little bit. I'm not sure Washington State has the size to deal with a Big Ten team like that on the road.
All right, now probably a closer game of all the games that we're going to talk about, Fresno State and Oregon State. Oregon State coming off a big win over Boise State. Chance Nolan, their quarterback, had 251 yards, a couple touchdowns, and a couple of picks. I think he cleans it up for the interception side of things. So I'm going with Oregon State to beat the Bulldogs.
I'm surprised. I think Oregon State is a good team. I think they're a 7-8 win team this year. Vegas doesn't seem to think so. That line last week I thought was sort of criminally low. I think I referred to it as my lock of the year last week when Oregon State played, and sure enough, they won and they covered. Now they're facing a Fresno team. Jake Hayner's really good. Love Jake Hayner, fun to watch. I'm not sure he has the pieces around him to hang with what I think is sort of a fully mature Oregon State team. So I like the Beavers to both win and cover, maybe win big. I could see this being a 10, 14-point game with Oregon State winning. And Michael Lev is smirking and shaking his head.
No, you guys are wrong on this one. Sorry, Fresno's going to win this game.
Ooh.
First of all, it's at Fresno. Okay, it's going to be hot. Again, we talked about it with the Arizona-San Diego State matchup, right? Oregon State is not used to playing in the heat, so that will be a factor. Another factor is Fresno State has a really good quarterback in Jake Hayner, and Fresno State might very well be the best team in the Mountain West. this season. The third thing I'll say,
Air Force.
We'll see. The third thing I'll say is that, that Oregon State game against Boise, a little fluky, a little lucky. Boise was turning the ball over like crazy in that game, and they actually almost snuck back into it in the second half. I don't think it was quite as one-sided as the score would suggest. A Boise team that maybe doesn't know who its quarterback is versus a Fresno team that has, one of the best quarterbacks in the group of five. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take the Bulldogs in this one.
Ooh, look at you.
Repping the Mountain West. All right, how about before the Arizona-Mississippi State game? 4:30 p.m. kickoff, Arizona State visiting Oklahoma State. And the Cowboys are 11-point favorites in this game. ASU coming off a monstrous victory over Northern Arizona, absolutely boat racing the Lumberjacks.
Hey, man, as Arizona showed last year, you still got to show up when NAU comes to town.
Very true. Now, what do you guys think about this game? Because Oklahoma State, they're coming off a shootout win over Central Michigan.
I see what you did there.
Spencer Sanders, their quarterback, had 406 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Oklahoma State's offense looks like the real deal. But with that being said, I think Emory Jones, Herm Edwards, those guys can scrap up a game plan and keep it competitive. So I'm going to go with Oklahoma State to win this game, but I'm going to probably choose the Sun Devils to cover. I'm going to go with the Cowboys by 7 or 10 points.
To quote or paraphrase Krusty the Clown, Michael Lev, I wouldn't touch this game with a 10-foot clown pole. To me, this number, I don't know, man. This is a tough number. You would think ASU would have the talent to not get boat raced against what I consider to be a middling Big 12 team. On the other hand, I don't know. If I were in Vegas, I'd keep my money in my pocket and go do something else for 3 hours.
Well, I'll choose the over in this game.
Right, but if you're making me, sounds like you're making me. If you're making me, I think ASU backdoors their way into a cover and loses by 10.
Middling Big 12 team that's ranked 11th in the AP Top 25. And I'm an AP
in
Top
terms
25
of talent.
voter.
I meant in terms of talent.
Okay.
God, stop
That's
using
fine.
facts against me, Michael.
That's fine. I am not buying into ASU at all. I don't care that they beat NAU. I still think that this team has a lot of issues they just weren't revealed in that particular matchup, and they will be exposed in this game in a difficult road environment against a top-tier Big 12 team in Oklahoma State. I will take Oklahoma State to win and cover against ASU.
By the way, you want to talk about a sneaky, fun place to see a game? Stillwater. I'm not a huge fan of the couple of times I've been to Oklahoma. The weather has sort of ruined my time a handful of times, but
I'll say it gets windy up there.
It does. But Stillwater, we saw Greg Hansen and I saw Arizona lose in one of the Stoops years at Stillwater. Watched the fourth quarter on the field, standing next to young Ricky Fowler, who was there. It's a cool stadium, and man, do they love football in Oklahoma. Good Absolutely. Lord.
All right.
Future conference opponent, Oklahoma State, maybe.
Would Arizona finish above them in the LA Times' list of good places to visit?
Good question.
Separate podcast. Yeah. Separate podcast.
Topic for another time.
Yes.
All right, so now the main event, Arizona versus Mississippi State, 8 p.m. kickoff. And the Wildcats are 10.5-point underdogs. So what are we thinking here, guys? Arizona, they showed out last week against San Diego State. There were a number of factors that obviously played in favor for the Wildcats. But against a SEC opponent, man, do they love to throw the ball. They're going to get out into space. This is going to be a tough task for Arizona's linebackers, secondary. I'm not really sure that the Wildcats are going to win this game, but I do like them to cover the spread, barely. And I'm going to go with the Bulldogs to win 34-24.
Okay.
And I got Jaden DeLora passing for 3 touchdowns, and obviously Tyler Luke making a field goal.
This point spread to me is fascinating. If San Diego State beat Arizona last week, what do you think the line would be? I still think it'd be about this. To me, that means Vegas thinks Arizona's win over San Diego State was a fluke. Now, I don't know if Vegas is right or not, but 10.5 seems like a big number for a team that's 1-0 and just put on an offensive display against a really good physical San Diego State defense. I like Arizona to win this game, believe it or not, guys. I like Arizona to win this game 34-31. I think that the path to victory is to run the football. I think it is clock control and it's setting tempo. But I still think this turns into a little bit of a track meet at the end. Arizona 34, Mississippi State 31, sending Mississippi State fans and their cowbells home unhappy. You know they ring cowbells in the stands.
Yeah. Are they allowed to bring them in? Do we know that?
Wow. You're going to see Dave Hickey today. Ask him.
Yeah.
Good question. Okay. So I like the point that our colleague John Wilner made in his Pac-12 picks this week that maybe there's going to be a course correction for Arizona as it pertains to the spread, and it really hasn't happened yet. People just don't believe what they saw last week. But I mean, that was a legit win. Maybe the most impressive performance by a Pac-12 team in week 1. That being said, I have a lot of scars from past games against Mike Leach. I mean, I went up to Pullman two times and saw Mike Leach coach teams put up 69 points against Arizona.
Twice.
I mean, that's a lot of points. One game was 69-7. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I know what his offenses are capable of. I think Will Rogers is like as good as any of those quarterbacks that he's had, and he also has better players on defense with Mississippi State than he ever had at Washington State. That's just kind of the way it is when you're in the SEC and you're anyone other than Vanderbilt. I mean, you're just going to have a higher caliber of lineman, a higher caliber of athlete, almost by accident. When you throw the recruiting net out there and go fishing for prospects, I mean, they develop players, especially in the interior, in the Southeast better than anywhere else in the country. And the Pac-12 lags behind in that area. I go back to the trench battle. That was kind of the reason that I chickened out of picking Arizona last week. I underestimated how good Jaden DeLauro was going to be in dodging the pass rush, but there were a lot of pass protection breakdowns.
Yeah.
A lot. And I just don't know if that's a sustainable thing. I think the spread is too high. I think Arizona's very plucky, and they're going to show out, and they're going to be super competitive, but I think they're going to come up just short against a team with better talent and a lot of experience. This is an old Mississippi State team with a lot of seniors, a lot of upperclassmen. So I'm going to take Mississippi State 31, Arizona 27. So Bulldogs win, Wildcats cover, and under the 60.5.
I'm going to go. I think the game plan here for Arizona, I think they're going to use a lot of tight ends a lot this game.
Okay.
Because we saw a lot of Jacob Cowing last game. So now that the jig is up with Jacob Cowing, Mississippi State, they're going to game plan around that. So it's going to free up a lot of T-Mac. But I also think we're going to see more of Kean Burnett, this great tight end that they brought in, who we didn't really see a lot last week against San Diego State. It was more Tanner McLaughlin. It was kind of his show.
Sure.
But Alex Lyons and Kean Burnett, they've always been the top two guys at the tight end spot. I think with a big game at home, I think this is where Jed Fish kind of shows more of his tricks and uses the tight end more. And I'll obviously use the running backs more in the passing game as well.
I mean, there is,
man. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all like the idea of a Pac-12 SEC matchup, right? Like, it's exciting.
And it's
like,
Pac-12 after dark, man. Weird things happen.
It's true. Like, when Ole Miss came here for the Super Regional a couple years ago, I mean, it was just a sort of a little extra something, a little extra juice, having a Pac-12 team face an SEC team for big stakes. So Jed Fish pretty much dismissed that idea and said it didn't matter at all. But I think it matters to the fans.
Yeah.
I'm
just worried that Arizona fans are going to say we want Alabama if they end up winning on
Saturday. You're going to get them in 2031 or whatever. So, I know what you're saying about Pac-12 after dark. And I think it could very well be, hey, look, they play LSU next week, right? They played Memphis last week in a revenge game. You guys remember that weird, there was an officiating blunder, like an out-and-out mistake made by the officials in last year's Memphis, Mississippi State game that pretty much cost them the game. So that was a revenge game. They've got LSU coming up. Maybe they're not going to take Arizona that seriously.
Do internal clocks matter?
I think so.
Because they're on 10 p.m.
Yeah, I think all of those things matter. But what I'll go back to is just how old this Mississippi State team is. Like, there's a lot of veteran guys.
Yeah.
You know, they've been to all of the difficult places to play in the SEC. I don't think that, you know, coming to Tucson is going to be an intimidating experience for them.
All right, well, that'll do it for this episode of the Wildcast. For game previews of Arizona, Mississippi State, go to Tucson.com and download the Wildcaster app for free off the App Store and Google Play. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the Wildcast podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.